on the treaty itself. I'm sure when we were planning Valentine's Day a couple of weeks ago, a discussion on the Treaty of Lisbon probably wasn't in the top 10 what we had in mind, but such is the timing anyway. If I could just say a few words about why we've done this. First of all, we thought when the Treaty of Lisbon was initially agreed upon, even in advance of the 13th of December when it was signed, we knew there would be a treaty in July of last year. So naturally we've begun to work on the treaty, and we found that we needed to have an intelligible text that we could actually open and look through the provisions. Now, the Treaty of Lisbon, as I'm sure you're all aware, and I'm sure you all have copies of the treaty itself, perhaps not as like bedtime reading material, but I'm sure you've all seen the text, reads basically as 200 pages of amendments. Now, these as standalone documents are fairly unintelligible if you were to take them in isolation. So what we needed to do was to consolidate them into the current treaties so that you could read the document as a whole, as a corpus of material, so that it would make sense. Now, this was done in 2004 when the Constitution was produced. The difficulty there was that when the copy of the Constitution was made available and was consolidated by the Council of the European Union, it was made available to the public, and the danger there, and perhaps this is why the Council has decided not to produce a consolidated version this time round, was that people may have considered that this document was an entirely new treaty, that it was something completely new, and that they would tend to look at individual articles, in particular perhaps the economic provisions, and think, this is new, I'm going to vote on the economic provisions, I perhaps don't like this title, I'm going to vote against this title. Whereas in the case of the Treaty of Lisbon, you have the list of amendments that are clear, and we are not voting on the European Union Treaty, we're not voting on the European Community Treaty, we are voting on the sequence of amendments to those treaties, which is why a consolidated text, I presume, has not been produced by the Council, because we're voting on a list, as I said, of about 200 amendments, and not an entire set of a treaty or two treaties. Which is why the Institute then stepped into the breach and produced this version, because despite the fact that you have the Treaty of Lisbon, so it's clear what the amendments are, you still need to read these in the context in which they are to be introduced, which is why the Institute has produced this version. It's also available now in the 359 public libraries, I think, in Ireland. I didn't have so many, but it's winging its way out across the country as we speak. So the information is there, and we're very keen in the Institute, as it is part of our remit, to encourage debate on Europe and to ensure that factual and independent information is given, so that this sort of material will benefit not just partisans of the yes, but also partisans of the no. This information is completely independent, is offered without spin, without any sort of bias or slant. It is a factual document that can be lifted up by anybody and be read in that context. And as Brendan mentioned, we have three versions. We have a consolidated text in English, there is a Gaelic, and there is, as we said, a track changes version as well, so that anybody who's really keen on the detail can see exactly what has been removed from the treaties, what has been amended. We also felt it important to introduce footnotes, because there are certain articles which have been deleted from the treaties, but they have been reproduced as a new article. Now, it is important to highlight this point, because if someone were to pick up the treaties and see that, for instance, Article 3 of the European Community Treaty has been removed, it is not gone for good, it is reproduced at another point of the treaty, which is why we have footnotes. Now, this may be the sort of material that perhaps is more useful for lawyers and for researchers, for experts, but it is important to foster factual debate. And I think this is one of the key points. If we are to have a clear, concise referendum on the Treaty of Lisbon, it is clear to have fundamental factual texts to begin with, and that should be the starting point for any campaign. Naar staat vierdag an instituut Hulshi is a dingerilla. Chunus an ordu a chur a glich Lani institute in Yochi International agus orpacha a fachains to Tushkin orpacha a chur chin. En nu te broder an institute is three falchach an nua an gunner Lisbon. Garin narrative like in the clove Lita na Connery in Neliga. Macrik, the white Marish Bliffus, a goal, Lish and Aristat, as in Tachet and you. And I would now like to invite Minister Roche to receive our small Valentine's gift.
Peadar promised that it would actually be on the bedside table. In fact, I just want to say, I think that he summarised excellently the challenge that lies ahead of us. I was just doing an interview with Le Monde before I came over here, and I was pointing out to them that although we had certain allergies about the constitutional treaty document, at least the fact that it shows in that title, that it was an infinitely more elegant text than the text that we have before us in the Reform Treaty. And there's a very real danger that people will use the fact that the treaty approach, the approach has been adopted to many of the treaties, which is the traditional approach, which is so confusion. So in tasking Peadar with the job of producing a consolidated version of the treaties, I think the Institute has done this nation and the debate that we have to go through some service. I'm particularly pleased that the Institute has published the text in both Irish and English, and alongside these texts the annotated version. I was telling Peadar earlier on that a British politician who's currently involved in a very intimate way in the debate in Westminster was talking to me a little while back and said he had actually gone on the IIEA website. He said, I found this really great consolidated version, and we printed down lots of copies, and it's being used as the standard text in my office. So we sent you the bill later. The publication of this document it refutes the suggestion that there is a dearth of information out there on the treaty. And really the task I think that we all have to get across in the next few weeks and months as we enter into the fray and come up to the end of May and the early part of June is our biggest single job and our most important responsibility is to provide the Irish people with information. The Irish people possess the Constitution, it's their Constitution, and they're the only sovereign authority with the right to change or to amend that Constitution. And the service we should do to the people is respect them and respect that reality, and respect that the best service we can do to the people is to provide them with clear, unambiguous information.